There is power in personal stories. It connects us, it empowers us, and it holds us accountable. It creates understanding and expands our perspective. This is Big in the Community with Jonathan James at the Kalamazoo Promise, a podcast aimed to highlight local leaders, collaborators, and innovators in the greater Kalamazoo community. In this episode, I sit down with Beth Berglin from Michigan Transformation Collective. We talk about policy change, catalyzing racial healing, and collective impact. All right, welcome back to another episode of Big in the Community. We have an amazing guest here, Beth Berglin, co-founder and director of policy and strategy from Michigan Transformation Collective. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonathan.
So I'm going to start us off with a quote.
Okay.
I almost forgot it. Policy is the way we love our neighbor at scale. And that's Justin Gaboni, either way. So Beth, you've spent more than 2 decades helping families, nonprofits, and advocacy organizations get their voices heard. Can you share a bit about how you've first found yourself drawn into public policy and systems change?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jonathan. I started my career really in college. I was a criminal justice major, and I ended up working in juvenile detention for about 2 years in a couple different places, and saw time and time again these youth coming into these facilities that had stories that were so unlike anything I had heard before growing up where I grew up, and realized very quickly that I had absolutely nothing to do that could help them. There was nothing I could say or change from within the system. And so I took a step back and said, okay, where could I go influence a child's life? I started working in summer camps and childcare centers. And through that process, learned about camp licensing and childcare licensing and all the ways that the government determines what the rules are for those types of programs. And really started to question who writes them and who benefits from them. And that actually put me on my path to public policy. I happened to be working, I went back to college, went back to Michigan State. And
is that where you went for undergrad?
It is.
Okay.
And my master's.
Okay.
And started working at the childcare center on site at Michigan State while I was going back to school. And the governor's kids went there. And so Gretchen Whitmer was my state representative then, and she was just a mom on the playground. And I walked up to her and asked her how to get involved in public policy change. And through just a handful of steps, she helped me get an internship in the Michigan House of Representatives. And that completely blew the door open for me on what the whole system looks like from the inside, and how easily it is from the inside to make change, but how hard it is for people and for advocates on the outside to make change. So it's given me this perspective that through all the places where I've worked, you know, I've never advocated for funding or a policy change that impacted my employer. It has always been with an organization that was fighting for systems change, for children or for Alice families at the United Way, or veterans, or housing, or maternal and infant health and childcare, across these systems that my organization was funded to advocate for. And I've been blessed to be in positions where I was never fighting for our own solvency as an organization, and always fighting for the community.
And you said Alice families. What are Alice families?
So Alice families are families who are above the technical federal poverty line, but below the ability to really take care of their own family's needs on the wages they make. It's the United Way ALICE acronym. It's Asset Limited Income Constrained but Employed. So ALICE. And those families really are people who are working really hard every day to make ends meet, but they can't ever get through the career path that they're on, an income that will make it easier for them to live in community.
No, I've heard the acronym before, but like not everybody who's listening might have heard of it. And I didn't know about it until like I was working here.
Yeah.
I was like, Alice, like who is she? Like
that's right.
the first time I heard it. But it is something where like people are, they're working, they're doing what they can, but then they can't make it to the next like step.
That's right.
It's referred to as different things. Like in one book I read, it was like the poverty like gap or threshold where like you're making enough, but there's just like a gap that you can't get past that to where you're actually saving money.
That's right.
Building, like generating wealth.
That's right.
Anything that you can pass on, you're really just going paycheck to paycheck. And when we talk about like families thriving and, versus just surviving, how do you get past that gap?
That's right. And they're families who don't typically qualify for any like subsidies or government programs that could help them get a leg up. And, all of the work that we do is really focused on the impacts of families who are generationally living in poverty and without great housing and without access to convenient transportation and without schools that are highly invested in. And, across the social determinants of health, like that's what we're talking about constantly is how do we put in the conditions in a community for families to thrive. And it's, I feel like it's going to be never ending, but it is, that's the fight that we've been fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed even with a lot of nonprofits or organizations, like in their mission statements, it's not necessarily that they have to. It's that they live in a community where they can
That's right.
thrive. It's just the ability to
Yep.
let's make it so it's possible for people, not force them to, but just make it so like they have the same rules, social determinants as other people.
Yeah, it's the access, right? It's this idea of creating the conditions in which a family could X.
Yeah.
Right. That a student could X, that, whatever that next step is, whatever their ideal is, that they would have a pathway towards that at some point put in front of them.
Yeah.
And for many, many, many families, for example, like the path to home ownership is never placed in front of them. They never have the ability to build a 10% down payment, all of those types of things where,
or even know to do that.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
It's funny because I keep thinking about I've thought about it before, but I've even now with like all the projections of like, Gen Z is not going to be able to like afford houses and like all these things that are coming out. I've always wanted to like, buy my son a house or like have them set up where like they can't, or at least the down payment, something like that. Cause I'm like, if we don't, it looks like won't be able to have a house.
Right.
Even, was it Maxwell House Coffee? They changed their name to Maxwell Apartment. Like it's a real thing. Like, because it's just not, people don't see that as a possibility anymore, which I'm like, that's an old company too. Like for them to change it.
Is that a joke or is that real?
I think it's real. At
oh
least
God, please tell me it's
when
a
I
joke.
saw it, it was a real. Can you Google it? Oh yeah, it's real. That's so bad. Oh, it's a limited time.
It's a shtick.
Okay. Okay. But still.
But it underscores the need, right? It underscores that like, nope, this generation will never have. So,
Okay.
that the idea of like purchasing a property and having it be, wealth building for your family just overall, right? Like you could purchase a property and rent it out.
Yeah.
And you could choose what neighborhood that is in, and you could choose, right, what those conditions are for people who live there. There are lots of families who will never sell their parents' home because they did purchase it. And it's like a family, it's a piece of wealth building opportunity for their family. And the idea that like you would sell it now and potentially 5 years from now, it could be double the price, right? That fear of undervaluing what you hold. It's, you know, like I told you, I've moved so many times that like the idea of having a generational home is like absurd.
Yeah.
But, you know, my mother-in-law has lived in her home since my husband was in first grade. And we don't want her to sell that house.
Right. But it's
not just memories. It's also, you know,
like financially
right?
stewardship, that sort of stuff. Okay. That's one subject we could talk about forever. So what personal experience or values shaped your passion for centering people with lived experience in policy decisions?
I think that the two things that I would really call to, so first of all, I'm a lifelong Girl Scout.
Okay.
And so for me, the Girl Scout promise and law, as like kitschy as it sounds, really do call to thinking about your neighbor, always considering your community, you know, the things that, you know, always leaving a place better than you found it. That's not necessarily just like picking up trash at the park. Leaving places better than you found them has been something that just sticks with me for my whole life. And that desire to be like civically engaged, I think, came from that too. But, you know, in 2007 through 2011, I was working as a legislative staff in the Michigan House. And through that economic downturn, the thousands of phone calls that we received from people who have never asked for help before and had no idea where to go to look, and that the options available to them were not built with them in mind, and were so ill-suited to handle an economic crisis, that all of the things that we really like worked on as a team after that were really looking at what does it mean to create systems with, you know, you call that person back and say like, okay, were you ever able to get your unemployment approved? Were you ever able to find support for a career change program? You know, all these folks, I worked for a district that was downriver in the Detroit area, and so many people were like in the auto industry, and those jobs were gone forever. Those they did not come back, right? And so all of those folks were either unceremoniously retired, where they, you know, started other careers that were completely different than anything that they had experienced before, with wages that were fully inadequate compared to what they were making previously. And I ended up teaching classes in childcare and child development at Jackson Community College after I finished my master's degree. And I had a few students who were older gentlemen who were in those classes because they were like, well, if I have to create a whole new career, I might as well go play with kids. And that perspective of like, I have to completely wipe my slate clean, but I'm going to go into this other industry that does not look like me, that was not built for me to be employed there. You know, it's a very, very, the perspective of how do you bring the people into the policy changes that are necessary? Because we as like systems people, we can hear all sorts of ideas and then just like go with the changes. But having folks at the table with you consistently so that when you are writing talking points, when you are drafting a bill, when you are doing all of those things, you can work with them to make sure that, did we include everything that you meant? I know that this is a 42-page piece of legislation and it is a lot to look at, but let's sit down and let me break it down for you. And let's make sure that everything that you would have dreamed of is here. I think that so often people call lawmakers with ideas, and then the lawmaker just runs with it. And probably more in the past 7 to 10 years, it has been more community focused. It has been more focused on, who are the advocates, who are the coalition groups, who are all of the folks in their district usually that are like working on that thing that they can call back to and connect with. Thankfully, things have changed a lot since 20 years ago when I started working in this. I mean, it's literally the fall of 2005 when I interned in the Michigan House. So it's been literally 20 years, and things have changed a lot in terms of constituent access to the policy change machine. We're really lucky in this area that our lawmakers are really close to home. We see them everywhere. They're really accessible. We've got folks who represent us here who really do think about constituent voice and really do think about those things. So we're very lucky in Kalamazoo County.
Yeah. I didn't realize how easy it is to actually talk with them. And I didn't realize that there are many opportunities to do that. 'Cause a lot of times when we're thinking about initiatives or things that we want to do, I think about we work with students. So I think about my 18 to 20, 8-year-old self. And I was just a regular person.
Yeah.
And that version of myself is so different from when I started working in general, but also working here.
Yeah.
Where I hear from people on LinkedIn, or I see all these different things there's grant opportunities, there's Rise and Thrive, or all these different things that are just networking things. And it's I can sign up for free, go talk to a politician, and I just didn't know about it. It's that easy.
That was the first elected state person I ever talked to was a mom on the playground. Right. So my entree into this was much softer than what other people probably think it looks like.
Yeah.
It's not all, protest signs, on the policy side. When you really have a good idea, coming to a table, going to a community meeting, mentioning it to them at a coffee hour, all of those things, it is so much more comfortable. When the first job I had when I left the Michigan House, I was coordinating these events where it was with youth who were either at risk of or had already dropped out and had returned to school. It was highlighting lots of programs around the state that were doing dropout prevention and recovery. And the format was that the youth would be the panelists. And the listeners would be systems change. They would be lawmakers or administrators, government bureaucrats who run state programs, school superintendents, the special ed director. So it would be all these youth who we would build the space for them. Right. So in this way of building spaces for the people whose voices need to be heard to be the center, that's really the model that based much of what we do right now at MTC, because if there's nobody in the room who's experienced the problem you're talking about, then you're just talking.
Right. So we can clearly we could talk about this stuff for a while. So Michigan Transformation Collective, can you tell us what Michigan Transformation Collective is?
Oh man. It's super exciting. We are almost 2 years in to MTC, and the work that we do started prior to all of us on the team. We continue to be the home of TRHD Kalamazoo, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Kalamazoo, and that being where we started, and now building out this into a system of an organization that really provides the background support for, local transformation and even statewide efforts and things like that, where we bring folks together around issues that have historically been rooted in racism and all of these systems change efforts that we know have been needed for decades. And the work that the how we do things is really still based in TRHT. It really is looking at racial healing and narrative change and community transformation and how they all require each other. We can't get anywhere near, what we like to call healing through policy without talking about the historic harm that was done, without talking about what is the narrative around this issue that continues to be based in harmful racial hierarchies. And once we do that, then you can move into, okay, let's bring the partners together that are, trying to churn around these issues that have been, historically problematic for everyone in community. Our vision, this, transforming harmful hierarchies into communities of hope, courage, and love. It sounds really cheesy, right? It's like, communities based in love, but it just gets back to that quote that you started out with, right? Like, policy change in practice is how I love my community. I am best suited to stand at the 30,000 foot level and narrow in on the very, very specific, precise things that a group of people is trying to change. There are other folks in community that we work with, like you, who inform that because of the scope that they cover. And bringing people together who have these very, very wide perspectives of scope and just churning around different conversations and having different leaders at tables that we convene who then bring their whole perspective as a community member, as a community leader, as a program director, as a parent. What are the roles in which we can bring together into space so that we really can make long-term generational change for our community. And our community could be as narrow as a couple of blocks to the whole state. There are a lot of changes that we work on, me specifically, in the policy area where our focus truly is statewide systems change because we know there are things we can't control at the local level. We can't control a lot of state funding. We can't control what Medicaid funds. We can't control what educational dollars come down to our local school districts. Those types of things require the work of statewide coalition building. And so in various coalitions that we either support or participate in, that healing through policy continues to be the focus of my scope of work. And it is massive and really, really narrow. Like we can talk about housing, transportation, K-12 education policy. All of those things have very, very specific narrow scopes at a given time, but we're never discounting the whole system. It has been the shift from pre-MTC to MTC over the past 2 years has given us the ability to try new things that we weren't able to try before and, do it in a way that is protected and feels safe to try something and make mistakes. Because we're working so closely with community partners who are also willing to sort of come to this table and try new things. It's never been done before. So we don't really have a model to map it on. And so we're crafting it together. It feels so much less terrifying to be doing it in community with a lot of partners than just making these decisions by ourselves as a team. You know, if we were running a program, it would be very different. But because we're looking at community change, it's really gratifying to see how far we've come in 2 years.
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach of, you know, it's not just your concern. It's, you know,
That's right.
community concerns. I think even one thing that at least I try to do is if like I ever am at a table or what, you know, something like this, I'm not just trying to get my point across. It's what I've been hearing from community members or like people around me. Not just my sole perspective,
That's
but
right.
like I would try to say like my perspective is influenced or like tries to take account of everybody else's that has, you know, voice concerns to me. Like if I'm a lot of times like we'll be at community events and somebody will come up and be like, you know, that promise needs to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, I hear you. Like, I hear you. But you know, so sometimes it's just like, oh, it needs to be in Portage or it needs to be in Mattawa or like it needs to be more. But other times there are like serious concerns that people do express, and it's like, oh, we didn't think about that. How can we, you know, at large do something about it? So it's interesting trying to get people's voices who aren't always heard at the table, to get it to the system level change.
Yeah. Well, you think about, you know, the promise as a prime example. Like we now have promises in how many cities across Michigan? It's there is something magical when a group of people comes together and just decides to do something for the first time. And being the first means you're going to be the first to be criticized too, though, right? Where like, yeah, your model wasn't exactly like other people who have rolled out new models, and models can shift over time, and you can expand and elaborate on the programs that you are offering to the community, but not changing the scope.
Yeah.
Right? We're not changing the scope. We're just realizing that we need more support for people who didn't use the promise right after they graduated. We need more support for people who are trying to use the promise who are parents. You know, all of these different perspectives. Then you can, if you give yourself the grace to grow over time, and it doesn't have to be immediate, but those types of programmatic shifts that organizations can make over time to adjust to community need, you know, it's hard to be the first, but it's also like so critical that in Kalamazoo County, like we have so many programs that are the first thing, the first community to do X in Michigan or even in the country. We have some incredible programs that exist here, especially across the educational spectrum, that, you know, are being replicated all over the place. And it's really commendable to this community to be like lean into bravery and courage, right? That you can like live out your character and live out your dreams for your community. And yeah, not everything is going to be as big and bold and costly as the promise, but there are a lot of things we can do as a community to invest in ourselves that will pay dividends in the future.
And it's just funny because I swear, like every week, like a new nonprofit pops up and I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have thought of that.
That was a good idea. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Well, I mean, we do have a lot of nonprofits.
I mean, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good and bad thing because it's like, it's bad that we have a need.
That's right.
For all these different things, but it is good that there's so many people willing to step up and do something about it.
And that we have the resources to create these, you know, new models of serving our community in ways that many other communities don't have, right? Like we were able to launch RX Kids really fast because of the philanthropic investment in our community. Lots of other communities around the state, we're not able to get the like local resources for that. You know, we can talk about all of these like unique programs. It is, you know, it's kind of a miracle that RX Kids happened in Michigan, right? But it's only because this pediatrician in Flint decided that like actually what families need is cash, with no ties, right? No strings. What you really need in order to bring a healthy baby into the world is more money.
Yeah.
And that 15 years ago, it could not have happened, right? That the perspective on what it looks like as a community to support families in your community has shifted dramatically.
And even now, like, you know, you can look at Facebook or social media and see the comments of like, some people are like, oh, this is amazing. Other people are like, oh, they're going to start having all kinds of babies now. Or just like crazy.
Great.
Like, good. Like, there should be more people being born. Like, why is that a bad thing?
Michigan's economy needs to grow. We need more people to be able, like, this idea that, you know, that home ownership, having children are unattainable. These are things that, you know, our parents' generation never considered, even thought about, had to struggle with.
Right.
You know, I keep hearing things like, oh, you know, when I bought my first house, it was a 10% rate. Like, well, it was also like $17.
But even in that, you said like first house.
That's right.
Like, not everybody could get a first, second, you know, like.
And all of those programs, right? Like, we think about when those programs started and all of these home buying programs started, they were dedicated to specific people. There were lots of folks who came home and were not eligible for the GI Bill, and lots of neighborhoods they couldn't move into with that. So it is the separation, the policies that we had in place that caused the separation of people. I mean, it's one of the things that we still talk about because of this. Like, when we talk about harmful hierarchies, that's what we're talking about, is like racial hierarchies within public policy, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, they got it and we didn't. It's like literally a whole swath of people didn't get it. And we can look at the systemic impacts that have happened over the past 50 years because of that.
We're talking about a lot of stuff. I don't even really need to ask questions with this one. Okay, we'll go with this one. Coalitions are at the heart of your approach. What have you learned about building and sustaining coalitions that keep equity and civic health at the center?
Man, that's a good question.
I feel like you talked about it a little bit already.
Yeah, before this work, we were really like a part of a lot of coalitions previously. Like, TRHT was a coalition in and of itself, but it was solely focused on Kalamazoo and had, really 3 sub-coalitions within it. But the work that we are seeing happen around the state in various coalitions, I think the number one problem that we're seeing happening is nobody's really funded to do it. That we as MTC are some sort of like miracle that our community has seen the need to continue to support this an entity that will be a convener of coalitions. So through some work that we did last year to get legislation passed that would allow community violence intervention workers in Michigan to be supported through Medicaid because it's a public health approach to preventing gun violence and death. We were able to get legislation passed, and then because of that, we are now working towards sustaining that work through building out a statewide CVI coalition that could look at different issues that need to be addressed on top of, sustaining grants that would go out to communities through the state budget appropriation and things like that. But, what are the policy changes that need to exist in various ways to support the people who are like using evidence-based models to prevent gun violence in communities? That is not something that funders really understand how to fund. That the sustaining of a coalition, there are a lot of folks who, lots of funders who fund like education, justice coalitions in various states. And, all of this work, really being focused on racial justice and equity at the core, and supporting workers who provide a public benefit, whose work has not been valued in a way that is responsive to the impact that they have. So we look at, the CVI folks here in Kalamazoo County. We're also looking at the childcare industry and looking at folks who have historically made sure every other employer can continue to function and yet make very, very near the minimum wage in Michigan. And so how do we as a community keep their voices at the center of systems change and keeping equity at the center? Like, this idea of civic health is one of my favorite concepts, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but civic health is the idea that a community has everything it needs to solve its own problems. And that concept is, people talk about that all the time, but giving it a phrase, giving it a term is really powerful, because being able to talk about that, we know in Kalamazoo County we have what we need to resolve our problems. We just haven't yet had a lot of alignment on what those problems are that we're trying to address. And so, through the Kalamazoo Movement for Peace Coordinating Council, we have these 28 directives that the community prioritized, that is making it easier than I've ever seen in all of the work everywhere I've worked, that for folks who are working in the industry and experience like the impact of different industries to come together around those 28 goals and not trying to resolve everything. Right? The problem is when you start talking about education access, people are like, okay, cradle to career, let's go. And it's like, no, you can't, we've talked about this a lot before. You can't talk about, the problems in not having enough infant and toddler care in the community and youth jobs at the same time. We can't talk about, the disproportionate number of Black boys not graduating from high school at the same time that we're talking about, childcare worker wages. There are just things that deserve their own space and deserve the right partners at the table and the time to get the right partners at the table. How often are we like, okay, let's schedule a meeting? And, it takes 5-6 weeks to find a time on everyone's calendar, but it's worth taking the time to make sure that all the voices need to be at that table are there.
I remember when I first started here, I went to a community type meeting, and we were talking about, we need to make these changes, or we need to do this stuff. And they were planning it out like year-long change. And I said, is there any way we can make this happen sooner? Because if we're talking about a 3-5 year plan, a lot of the people in this room are going to be here in 3-5 years because you're going to be at the next job. Right. So like I said this because I was like, we need to do something now. Like that's where my mind was at the time. And nobody said anything. Like it was crickets. And yeah, it was so awkward. I was like, did I say something stupid? Like I didn't. I was like, we're talking about stuff that's like kids can't get to after school programming. Why don't we do something right now about it.
That's right.
And we're like making these long-term plans. Like, and granted, I didn't know at the time, like it takes a long time to make those things happen, but I didn't, when they were talking about in a year, we're going to start rolling this stuff out. And then 2 years, then it's like actually going to be implemented and stuff. I was like, and granted, I don't think we met again after that. So I was just like, I think that sometimes when things like that happen, it gives like the like collaboration, like a bad name where everybody's saying like, oh, Kalamazoo's resource rich, collaboration poor, like that saying that everybody says.
But we're collaborating. Look at how much work we're doing.
Right. So I think that it's moments like that where people then say that. But it does take a lot of planning to make things like that happen.
That desire to address like an emergent need and knowing that it's going to take a long time. That is a balance that coalitions have to deal with all the time, right? Where especially, I have a similar perspective where it's like, oh, actually, I know somebody in an apartment that could do that. Like, we can make 7 phone calls and see if we can get the right resources drawn down or whatever that is. And I think that because I started in systems change within the government. And so it was super easy to get somebody from Department of Health and Human Services on the phone. Right. It was we had direct people we could call. And the fact that, constituents would sit on the phone for 2 hours, like people in community would sit on the phone for 2 hours and wait for someone to DHHS to answer the phone. Right. This experience of community versus being on the inside of change, that like even in coalition, it's really hard because you're like, okay, guys, what should we do next? Right. This like collaborative process can sometimes feel laborious. Right. And in order to actually make the change stick and make it, if you've got one shot at making it work well, because otherwise if you do it wrong,
it's not going to happen.
People in community are going to be like, well, we tried that, right? And we tried that. We tried that 10 years ago is like the worst thing. We moved to Kalamazoo just over 3 years ago, and the like learning that you have to have, every new issue that you start to work on, you have to like go back and learn the whole history of all the stuff that happened before, because otherwise you are going to sound like a person in the room who doesn't know what they're talking about, right? Because you don't. And that is also like, it's a huge challenge with coalitions and with people who are like, new social workers right out of school who are really eager versus somebody in community who's been running a nonprofit for 30 years. Their perspective on what's possible is going to be completely different, right? And what's possible, we talked about ARC's kids couldn't happen 15 years ago, but it's possible now.
Right.
So they'll like, maybe we should try it again. Maybe we should take another shot at that. It requires a level of like naivety sometimes too, to like be the one who throws out the ideas. Can we just get this moving sooner? And the people in the room being crickets. It's like sometimes somebody just needs to say it though. Right.
No, it's funny because like I've learned a lot after being in rooms like that. Because at first I was like, am I supposed to be here? And then I was like, no, I should. And then even stuff here where we're talking about, okay, how do we make this program be effective? How do we get students here? Whatnot. And a lot of times there's times where we're saying like, we need to drastically change this. Like if the numbers are, I don't know, let's say 50% and we're trying to make them 65, 70%, but we're not willing to change anything about how we're doing it. It's going to stay the same. Or if,
and not everything you all do can be changed actually by the promise. right? There are so many other systems that impact the success of the students
Yeah. It's
coming out of high school, going into college, their trajectory through.
Yeah. Cradle to career.
Cradle to career, right? Like if you've got a student who shifts their major more than once, right? It could put them on a path that is like multiple years longer than what they had initially predicted. So like all of those like things that happen in college that's not something that you can shift for, but it wasn't something that the program was designed for.
And that's why like things have changed a lot. Like it was just one person. Now it's like 28 people now.
Yeah.
Where we have like wraparound supports. We basically have like caseworkers. We have we have all this different stuff, and it's just sometimes it's like, okay, what's too much? Like I don't think any of it's too much. I think we could do. I'm not saying we should do everything, but if we could, why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And, you guys are, because you're such a major institution, you're connected to and through all these other systems of care in one way or another. And so, that those wraparound services, looking at housing, transportation, childcare, like all of those things, like they are going to lift up all the barriers that we're talking about in all these other spaces, right? The access and affordability of childcare is massive for young people who are going to school and aren't making very much money. Like for everyone, right? This is a system that has like been woefully underattended to for a really long time. Like preschool has gotten so much attention for the last 15 years in Michigan, and childcare, especially for infants and toddlers, is just unimaginably hard to find slots. It's something that we as a community are trying to address, and we need dramatically more investment in that. The federal government seems to be lessening support for programs that serve families with young kids. So, whatever we can do in community to cause more attention and more focus on, we've got enough childcare slots, but we just don't have enough teachers because the wages are so woefully inadequate to actually pay for your own life and your own kids if you have them.
It's like people who care about it enough to not make more, but also it's just not seen as like a career. It's seen as like something that people do on the side or
out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
And that like you shouldn't have to make choices about your career that impact your family's generational wealth. Right? Like these are, and especially home-based providers, right? Like most of them own their homes and they have literally turned their whole home over. All of their extra space, all of their living space into classroom space and child-focused space. And that the folks who are doing that work, you talk about keeping, perspective on a system of care. It is so undervalued. And they do work that is, they're talking about health. They're talking about like physical development. They're looking at the child's food intake. They're looking, every single thing that, other systems have like 7 people working there doing the whole thing. They're holding all of those roles for the handful of children that they're caring for. It is one of the main conversations that we talk about all the time is like, who are the people in community whose jobs have never been valued enough that are actually doing a public service, right? Their own bank account is taking a hit because they've choose to serve the public. That is a completely upside down version of the world that I want to live in.
Yeah. It's, there's so many things that go into like what makes a community and what's like the truest test. I've heard things where it's like the truest test of a community is how well they take care of their most vulnerable population.
Exactly.
And like you could look at the unhoused population, you could look at our youth, you could look at, you know, babies not being born, you could, like all those different things, and you could say like, oh, you're like, we're just not meeting the mark. Or you could say like, oh, well, we have the resources and we have all these things and we're doing something about it.
And it takes a long time. It takes there are, you know, there is like, you know, crazy urgency right now, right? Let's just talk about like an actual policy thing that's about to happen. So Michigan just got a letter that said that our SNAP benefits are not going to be paid in November. Every single family in Michigan that relies on those. Thanksgiving is coming. I mean, the weather or heating bills are about to go up. All of those things, right, that happen at this time of year. And regardless of what month it was, and the idea that families with babies are being political fodder is abhorrent. And we, you know, it's these like, what are these massive urgent things? In Kalamazoo County, we've got a group of direct service programs and systems folks who are building out this like urgent need conversation. And there's a dashboard that I can send you the link to. And folks can like really track in real time. Like it's being updated every other month by the programs that are feeding information into it. But about the cuts that have happened just in 2025 to our local programs. And those are the folks who are managing the urgent needs, right? We are going to continue to manage the long-term strategy because no matter what happens this year, next year, there are still going to be these long-term goals. And within these work groups, within these subgroups, we can talk about, okay, how do we shift? How do we manage this program getting cut from the state level? And how do we merge it into the goals that we were talking about before? Because we used to have that program, but now we don't. And so now we need to build out something that reflects that need. It wasn't a need yesterday, and now it is. But it's not going to shift the need for systemic change, right? So that the amazing thing about Kalamazoo is that you do have people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and move very quickly when urgency is needed. We saw it through COVID. You see it, you know, we saw it through the tornado relief fund, you know, all of these like ways in which our community can respond urgently to community need. And I'm sure we're not going to get right every time, but if we stop trying, then, you know, we should all just move.
Yeah. Oh man. I didn't even need any questions for this podcast. This is great. Let's see. What do I want to ask before we're, you know, going too far into time? Many people feel disconnected from policy processes. What advice would you give to everyday residents who want their voices to matter in decisions shaping their communities?
I think I probably would have felt that way too if I hadn't worked in the system. Because I got to know elected officials as people through like hours and hours and hours and hours of like working on various issues and learning actually that they are normal people. They happen to put their name on a sign and have the like courage to do that. But they only know what they know. They only have their own perspective. They walked into that job with their own career history and their own experiences too. And I think that everyone being an expert of their own story, you know, it's something that we try to convince people of over and over again, that like the things that you've experienced matter, and that if you don't tell your story, they'll never know. And also like there are lots of opportunities to go talk with people, it doesn't have to be in a public forum. You don't have to stand up with a microphone. You can just call their offices and like explain something that is going on. A lot of times the people that actually, not a lot of times, almost every time, the actual people who are getting the work done are the staff in the office, right? They're the ones who are answering the calls, writing on the emails, doing all the constituent work, helping people get their, health insurance turned back on if they like missed their reapplication deadline, all those things. But when it comes to like policy change, there are, every state representative, every senator at the beginning of right after the election, at the beginning of a new term, they're allowed to introduce a handful of bills, right? There are nonpartisan staff who basically say, like, I have this many hours in my life where I can write bills, and so you can only turn in so many at the beginning of the term. But every legislator has like only a handful of bills that they get to introduce at the beginning of every term. But after that cutoff, they can ask for drafts constantly, bills that you might have an idea of something that actually that's a federal program, and then they can work with you to figure out what changes could be made there. A lot of the things that we've experienced are a lot of the changes that I've actually like experienced are actually within like administrative changes, where like there's an opportunity to impact this program and how Michigan is going to implement it, how Michigan is going to use these federal dollars. Let's talk about how childcare licensing happens. Let's talk about how school districts provide school lunches, all of these things that public dollars go to, but the structure of those programs, administrators in state government decide what those look like. And every couple of years, there will be a redetermination or a renewal of what those rules are. And it's through a lot of coalitions that those bureaucrats get feedback on how those rules should be changed. There's untold numbers of blueprints and action plans and, all of these really, really great plans that, because the government only gave money to write a report, there isn't any money to actually implement the recommendations in them. And so when we look at, what are the recommendations that the state has said, okay, what can we do anything in Kalamazoo County? I think that the things that our elected officials are really good at is knowing where they can impact and where they can't. They have leveraged their roles in leadership to an extent that has really benefited us in community. We've got big change coming next year and who's going to represent us in election and after that. But between now and the end of next year, our representatives are our representatives in county level, city level. Like that election is in 2 weeks. The city municipal election is in 2 weeks. So, we have constant change in our community of who is represented. And we've got more and more people who are coming up who have never served before, raising their hand to say, like, I've got the courage and probably not the time, but I've got the courage at least to like put my name on the sign. And, I think we are the thing that we don't do as well, I think, is give people the tools to know what to do once they have an idea. And that sort of like grassroots movement building work is something that I think will be coming online in Kalamazoo soon. But the efforts, there are transportation, housing, education, justice, like various statewide and local things happening right now that folks absolutely can get tapped into with either professional expertise or lived experience that will dramatically shift what happens in our community over the next 10 years. The idea that you can't just like have an idea and have it turn into a piece of legislation. There are, like I couldn't even tell you how many times someone called an office that I worked for and came to us with an idea that then turned into a bill. Because lawmakers don't know everything. I had bosses who were attorneys. I had one who was a exec at Ford Motor Company. I had one, they have their own perspective, their own lanes of expertise.
Right.
They can't possibly know everything. And being able to call their office with an idea or email, or come to a coalition with an idea that then could lift it up as a priority for our community in an advocacy effort. We've been successful in doing those things. And so it's, we know that this can happen.
Yeah. Okay. These are amazing answers, and I'm very glad you're here and sharing. How can people get involved with the work that MTC is doing?
Oh man. Yeah. Like I said, untold efforts, but there are, innumerable efforts actually is what I should say. There are community focused events that are really, still focused on racial healing, and where they're, I think once a month still, we're still doing a community focus circle. Some of them may be thematic. I know we have one upcoming that's going to really look at families with like an intergenerational focus, which is super exciting. But if you are looking to get involved in like systems change efforts, you can email team@mitransformation.org, or you can reach out to Jonathan and he can get you connected, because he is a member of the Kalamazoo Blueprint for Peace Coordinating Council, which is continuing to make like big strides on systems change efforts and coming up with really cool ways of tracking our impact as a community, identifying the persistent needs that we have, and being able to look at the ways those things interact and are changed over time through, data and research. But yeah, we're really the like table of tables, right? The coalition is, I don't even know how many separate groups there are. In our work group, there's 4.
Yeah, separate groups doing good
separate work groups, right? So, it's been really beautiful to watch it grow across the last 2 years, and from where it started as like, here's this report, to now it's like a living, breathing thing that we are making an attempt to capture how far it's going, right? Like all of the changes that have been impacted. But yeah, it's been really amazing to watch everything that's happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's a lot. You guys do amazing work.
Yeah,
I just want to give you guys some kudos, and bringing people together isn't always the easiest thing, but somehow you've kind of perfected it. So,
oh, please don't this is a lot of not trial and error. I don't think we would say, but one of our core values is practice. And I think that ensuring that all the time we know that just like yoga is called a practice, like it's not a game. You're not competing against anyone. You are doing something that will evolve over time. Who knows where it's going to go? But we're really leaning into practice.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
I didn't need to do those questions. Keep doing the good work that you're doing, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's easy work to do when you have partners that actually show up and have like the courage to dream about something different. So
Nice.
thanks.
I think we'll end on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.